Murray, do you want to wait till we have a number of people, or what time do you want?
Well, I think let's start at 12:30 and then
1:30.
yeah, in 5 minutes. As soon as we have the panel, so I think we can start. Just 1 second.
Hi, Ranee.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. We're just going to wait for the other panelists and the rest of the media to join. I think we'll start in like 2-3 minutes.
Okay, that's fine.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Hi, Gerhard. We are going to start in just a couple of minutes. We're just waiting for everyone to come in, as well as Shevira to join.
Sure.
Great. Hi all, apologies. We're just waiting for our final panelists to join. We'll start in 2 minutes.
Okay, let's begin.
Perfect. Thank you, Marie. Hi, Ranee.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very good. I'll ask Gerhard to also share his screen, and then we can get started. Shevira is just finishing off her calls. I think she's also just joined. Shevira, if you can also let us know once you're in.
I'm in.
Perfect.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, great, great. Okay, perfect. So yeah, we can get started. We've got our panelists and everything's in order. We'll also make a recording of this available to the media. And obviously there's a lot of one-on-one sessions and interviews that can be held outside of this session. So good afternoon. My name is Kfir Rusin. I'm the Managing Director of API Events, the hosts of the EAPI Summit. I would like to formally welcome members of the press to our 8th annual EAPI press conference. Obviously, we usually hold this in Nairobi, and we've got a packed room of press members. We're just glad that we're able to continue this, albeit virtually. So hopefully next year we'll be back in Nairobi. As always, we thank the media for the crucial support that you've given the conference over the years, and also driving the real estate as well as housing narrative across Kenya and the broader East African region. So once again, welcome to the media, and thank you for your continued support of our summit, which is always very welcomed, and we really look to continue to work with you, especially now virtually, but also once we get back into Nairobi. So thank you to the media who have joined and who have also arranged one-on-one meetings with the various speakers as well as our panel for today. I would just like to give a few brief comments or introduction to this year's summit. Obviously, the pandemic has given us space and allowed East Africa's real estate sector the opportunity to reinvent itself and to build the foundations for more sustainable and inclusive future. So whilst there were a lot of trends pre-pandemic, we've really seen these accelerate through the last 12 to 18 months. And we really do believe that there's a real opportunity now to chart a more sustainable and robust future going into the forward. Based on that, this year's theme, reposition and reimagine, on the basis of repositioning and remanaging the market and the industry, and to provide a framework to build for the post-pandemic future by identifying new trends and opportunities for the region real estate investors and developers. So like always, we have a bunch of sessions focused on the different subsectors. We're looking at development, we're looking at finance, we're looking at retail, we're looking at offices. Obviously, affordable housing is also a big discussion as well. So we continue to have those discussions throughout the 2 days. I would now like to welcome our panelists. Gerhard, Zeelie, who's the head of Finance Africa at Nedbank. Shevira, Bissesor, the CEO of Gateway Real Estate Africa, and Ranee, Nanji, co-CEO of Tilisi Developments. Obviously a well-esteemed panel. And how we're going to run this session is I'll start off by asking each panelist a question, and then we'll open it up to the media for questions. For the media, please post your question in the chat or send it through your voice note, or post it in the chat.
But it won't change the signal.
So I'll start off with Gerhard.
Because people are putting the video on.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so I'm going to start off with Gerhard. Obviously, there's been a lot of change in the market over the last 12 to 18 months across the globe and across Africa as well. But I mean, from your perspective, from a lending perspective, what has been the key learnings, I would say, over the last 12 to 18 months, and maybe making that also relevant from an East African perspective as well?
I think there's been quite a few learnings, but I'll try and sort of focus on what I think is key, and that is not to try and predict the future, because we find ourselves still in a very, very uncertain time, but rather to be very agile and have the ability to consider scenarios and be able to direct yourself towards any of those scenarios in a very quickly way, coming back to the concept of being agile. I think what we've learned is that in an uncertain time, one can get very, very exhausted by trying to come up with a level of what you think could be the future. I think it makes all of us comfortable to say, well, things are going to look like that. Whether that's good or bad, it really doesn't matter. But the fact that we can predict it fills us with a level of confidence, I guess. But that's just certainly not where we find ourselves at the moment. And hence the ability to move in any direction fairly quickly, which obviously makes it quite difficult in the real estate space because projects have long lead times and also long times to develop.
Thank you. Perfect. Moving on, Shevira, from your perspective, obviously Greer is quite well represented in the region. You've just completed the Metroplex redevelopment in Uganda. So maybe if you can shed some light on that, how that has progressed, even in light of the pandemic, and maybe also what new projects you have in East Africa, in Kenya, and where from a group perspective where the focus is going to be.
Thanks, Kfir. Yes, yeah, we were very excited to complete our refurbishment of our shopping center in Uganda. It was quite a challenging project, especially through the pandemic hitting at the late stage of our completion. But what it actually taught us is that through working with the right teams in terms of our consultants that we use, having the right resources in place as well as the right systems in place, we were able to successfully complete the project, even though COVID threw us various challenges with different lockdown protocols within the country. But despite that, I think what really helped is our strong team. Our strong team that created proper risk mitigation strategies as soon as we knew that this virus is going to meet us in Africa. We, our development managers, as well as our head of development and the rest of our Exco team as well, put our minds together and brainstormed how we're going to complete our current assets. And one of it being this project in Uganda. And yes, it was challenging, but through our initiatives in terms of creating proper mitigation strategies around how we're going to deal with COVID protocols, the lockdown levels. Despite all of that, we still managed to complete the project. We had Carrefour as a major anchor tenant in the mall. That's a French retailer that actually took up most of the space. They are our anchor tenant. And we were excited to introduce them to the Uganda market earlier this year, followed by Woolworths that also joined in our mall, as well as big brands like Aga Khan and DTB, as well as MTN. So I think for us it was unlocking the potential of Uganda, but at the same time, we were able to work as a team to bring the project to a successful end.
Perfect. Yeah, obviously it's an interesting, development as it's a bit different to the traditional ones being done. And obviously there was a whole session on that now, which I know you came from. So we can pick up a bit more on that topic as we move on. Ranee, obviously Tilisi is quite a well-known development in Kenya. It's garnered quite a lot of positive traction over even in spite of COVID-19. Which subsectors and how have you seen the market shift, specifically with we've seen trends happen in terms of moving to more suburban areas. How have you seen demand and trends play out from a Tilisi development perspective over the last 12 to 18 months?
Thanks, Kfir. Yes, I think, Tilisi, for those who know it, is like a master plan community on the outskirts of Nairobi. It's a mixed-use development. So I think for the different uses, it's kind of been slightly different during the pandemic, or at least over the last year. From a residential perspective, we actually are doing our own development of 3 and 4 bedroom villas, which we launched October 2019. And when the pandemic struck, we were not really sure whether how Nairobians would react to that. However, we found that not only during that year, during lockdown, did we have more visitors, but we actually had over our budgeted sales. So we kind of thought, well, people are at home, so they can visit more, etc. They can come and see it. But actually, what we found is that people have changed their priority on where they want to live, and the green space is a much bigger ask or a much bigger want in people's lives as the pandemic came into play in Kenya. So we found on the residential side, our villas sold well, in fact, above budget since March last year, when the lockdown started. On the other side, on logistics, land for logistics and industrial land, I think there was a definite slowdown. Many of the conversations we were having kind of just stopped, or basically just stopped. However, I think this year we have found that actually a lot of those conversations are being renewed, and I think people understand that pandemic is not a short-term thing that's going to just end. I think people understand that they kind of have to live with this in a way, and therefore are kind of re-looking at their expansion plans, and I guess it's people are, I'm quite surprised at how resilient people have been through this pandemic. So that's kind of the difference in what we've seen between residential buyers and industrial buyers. But for industrial buyers, we've actually had almost increased interest in the last 6 months, and we're actually kind of opening up phase 2 of our industrial precinct just because we've got this increased interest.
Okay, great. I'll ask if anyone from the media has a question at this point in time. You can either type it in or voice it, or just speak as it were. I don't know if anyone from the media has a question at this point. Okay, so yes, I think whilst we wait for that, maybe let me just push on with another follow-up question, maybe Ranee, to yourself. In terms of, obviously Kenya's, there's been quite a lot of traction around the affordable housing side of things. Where do you see, how does Tilisi fit into that? And what are your views in terms of, in terms of the government's push? Do you think that will continue or has been slowed down by the pandemic? And where does Tilisi fall into working as a developer or as a master plan city in regards to that?
I think, the government's push has continued around affordable housing, with or without the pandemic. It has been harder for developers to come in during the pandemic, just because of the sheer, I guess it's the fact that the capital that's needed is huge to be able to do that kind of affordable housing. So whilst the government has continued to push, and developers, I think perhaps would have slowed down slightly, but I think the demand is definitely there, right? And at Tilisi, we have about 50 acres kind of zoned for high density apartments, which you could call for affordable housing, perhaps not in the government definition of affordable housing, but affordable, affordable in the sense that it's like a 4 to 7 million shilling price bracket. And we've had one developer, Maisha Developments, that have actually broken ground at Tilisi. They're doing 2 and 3 bedroom apartments at that kind of price range, 4 to 7, and then they have a higher price range for 3 bedrooms at about 10 million. So for us, the pandemic has not stopped developers such as Maisha to start and break ground. But I can imagine overall, there has been a slowdown in developers coming in to actually put in affordable housing, just because there is a concern on capital, and I think generally borrowing is tougher.
Sure, thanks. Maybe just taking a cue there in terms of borrowing and capital. Gerhard, I know you've been asked the question many a time, but on the housing side, both from a capital and we had a session on capital structure earlier, but in terms of funding the sector, obviously it's a bit more complex than traditional commercial real estate. I mean, what is your view in terms of housing developments, all the way from the mid end to the low end or high end? How are you seeing that from a funding perspective?
So I think the biggest thing in East Africa is still I would say the large scale absence of a very strong or prevalent home loan market, mortgage loan market, which means that only a few people that have cash resources or that can access cash resources, and quite often that's through family, have the ability to afford to buy a house. Otherwise, you need to consider rental. I think that's a very important thing that needs to be developed in I guess a large part of Africa, but also so specifically East Africa. And because houses are currently sold for cash, the ability for banks to fund it, or the necessity for banks to fund it, isn't really there, because as developers develop these units, they call for deposits and obviously also ongoing deposits from the purchasers, which means that they're actually funding these developments with the proceeds from actually selling the development. So as they're developing, they're constantly selling, let's call it that, and actually in that way developing it. I think where banks will start playing a stronger role in funding these developments is when people can't afford, or people actually access ownership of these houses through loans, home loans, which means that they might not necessarily be paying as the unit is being constructed, but only when it's completed, and then there's a requirement for banks to fund it. So we've been involved in very few, to be honest, housing developments or funding housing developments, and mainly because the developers didn't see a need for a bank to provide them with funding, since they have the ability to access funding from sales proceeds effectively.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Shevira, are you still there? Yeah, okay, there we go. Maybe just moving on from there, from a developer standpoint, you are, we discussed Metroplex. I know that there's corporate accommodation is one that you also look at. It's obviously a very different asset class to affordable housing, let's say. But from a Kenya and East Africa perspective, what are the key sectors that you're going to be looking at, driving into the future, taking the learnings of what's happened over the last 12 to 18 months? Where is GRIA focusing, looking into the future, and specifically, let's say, to Kenya and the East African region?
Yeah, I think for us, it's about focusing our mind shift now. We spoke about repurposing in the previous session and the panel that I was on, and many feel or believe repurposing is in the literal sense of taking an asset and basically adjusting it to another sector and need, basically a shopping mall into a residential. But for us as Gateway Real Estate Africa, we see repurposing as a mind shift, and a mind shift in terms of focusing our strategy on emerging trends. And right now, I think the fourth industrial revolution has motivated one to easily be adaptive to using technology. I think the fourth industrial revolution has been in existence for 4 to 5 years now, but many were too lazy to get onto an online meeting and attend a site meeting, as an example. You would find many that would want to rather jump on a plane and visit the country. So not only has it helped to reduce costs, it has helped to reduce the carbon footprint in terms of travel, but at the same time, it's also pushed people to shift their thinking around asset class. And for us, that rethinking and new strategy is around data centers, and I mean, with online shopping being on the rise in the African continent, we find that because of this online shopping, there is a need for data centers in the Africa continent, so that many people can be supported enough to be able to do an online shop. And attached to that is warehousing and logistics development. We're finding that the industrial space is also picking up. And as Gateway Real Estate Africa, our focus is around data center development. We've successfully just broke ground in Lagos, Nigeria, at the beginning of this year. And we have a pipeline and rollout of other data centers within East Africa going forward. And same with warehousing and healthcare. Healthcare is a big one for us as well. We broke ground and just 2 weeks ago now for a new clinic in Mauritius. And I think for us, it's about, reshifting that purpose and really look at our strategy in terms of what are the new market trends for now and the future. And I think in the last 18 months, in terms of lessons learned, it's more about, the fact that you can do anything you put your mind to. And us as the management team of Gateway Real Estate Africa, we come from various different backgrounds within the built environment. Our CEO, Greg Pearson, has a lot of experience within the African continent. He's traveled extensively and worked extensively in his previous company, AECOM, and same with myself. I'm from AECOM as well. We worked across Africa. And I think for us, it's about, if you focus your energy and your mind in terms of, what you want to achieve as a business in the different sectors, and making Africa a better space being our other priority, applying your mind to it, I think you can achieve anything that you put your mind to. And yes, the pandemic has been a challenge in our lives, and a lesson for us, or not a lesson, but a big learning is technology. And we're quite a flexible team. A Gateway Real Estate Africa, we have people sitting in Mauritius, in East Africa, in other different project countries, and even working from home before COVID. And that flexibility allowed people to think out of the box. And when the pandemic did hit, it was not a new normal for us. It was a normal for us. We were very used to working in an agile environment, being able to work from a coffee shop or from the airport or wherever we may be, and undertake a development from that aspect. But apart from that, I think over the last year or two, we have become very much excited about technology. And I'd like to believe that GRIA is in the forefront of innovation and technology. We've embraced the different uses of technology, especially around how we promote our buildings to proposed tenants. Proposed tenants and our key decision makers that may not be sitting in the project country. They may be sitting in America or in South Africa. And on that basis, we've actually introduced digital quite big in our developments, and the use of virtual reality. And I think that goes very key and hand in hand with the type of consultants and professional teams we collaborate with. From that basis, we were able to ultimately, post a goggle to our client with the QR code, and they could have a walk through the proposed building that they intend to lease in. So that is quite an exciting shift for us, something that we're very passionate about. And other aspects of knowing progress on the site, on our developments. We have Hikvision cameras installed on all our sites. We're not just ourselves, but our clients are able to have a real-time live stream of what progress is being made on our construction sites. So that's also very exciting for us. So I think as a company, we've embraced technology very well, and it's something we're very passionate about and excited about.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for that. So we are actually coming to the end. I don't know if there's any other questions coming from the media side, but we also have allowed and have put the media as well as the PR agency in touch directly with the panel, as well as obviously your representatives, to set up one-on-one interviews as well as questions. So I know that that's pretty much being done as we speak in terms of setting those sessions up. So I think that will bring us towards the end of this session. I would like to thank once again the media for joining us, and obviously we'll share this recording, we'll share the press release, as well as we'll also open up the channels to meet with the panelists one-on-one, and to ask and to set up interviews as we go. So thank you once again to the media. Thank you to our panel for joining and providing insights. And yeah, I know Ranee, you still got a session left. Gerhard just spoke this morning, so thank you for that. And Shevira, I know you just coming from another session, so thank you for your inputs. And we will end the session here, and then pick up all the media elements post this directly with yourselves and your teams. So thank you to everyone, and thank you to the panel, and we will pick it up offline.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.